Atte Korhola is at the moment a professor of environmental sciences, changed at the University of Helsinki, and he is also a docent in hydrobiology, specialized in aquatic sciences and paleolimnology. He's a group leader in environmental change research unit at the Department of Environmental Sciences, and he's a member of environmental panel of the European Academy's Sciences Advisory, and he is also a vice decan of social interaction in the Faculty of Biological and Environmental Sciences. Please.
Thank you. So, Jouni really presented a very comprehensive summary about projected and ongoing changes in climate. So I'm not going to repeat anything what he said, but focus on the mitigation strategies. This is going to be a little provocative, so I think we need some new thinking in any case in order to approach this problem in a multidimensional level that is really needed now. Because it seems that this is the case. Our emissions are continuously rising even more rapidly than has been expected. According to any of the IPCC models. So, our current observed increase in emission rates is something like 3.5% in an annual basis, and it's really heavy load of greenhouse gas emissions, especially CO2 into the atmosphere. But the real problem actually is here. It's coal. The increase of coal in a global energy production is continuously increasing, and it's increasing more than anything else of our energy sources available. And the annual rate of increase is at the moment approximately 5% per year. And it's huge, and it's mostly increasing in a non-OECD countries. So developing economies are heavily dependent on coal. And at the moment, although we have invested quite markedly on alternative energy sources and renewable energy sources, they cannot even compensate the annual growth of coal. To say anything about that they would eat the bulk of the coal at the moment. So coal is really the problem. And here are some numbers that illustrate the problem more clearly. So energy use of coal has increased threefold to oil and twofold to gas during the last 10 years. This, however, might change due to the shale gas inventories that are revolutionizing the energy markets quite rapidly, even here in Europe. During a couple of decades, the CO2 emissions in China have increased by 321%, and in India even more pronounced. By the end of this year, actually, this is statistics from year 2010. So China and India will build up 850 new coal-fired power stations. So this is something that really is beyond our imagination. It's such a huge amount of coal that is going to be used. And even in countries like US, the consumption of coal has increased quite rapidly. And even in Europe, but not so dramatically, of course, than in in the rapidly developing economies. These are some, I think these are unpublished model simulations by Jim Hansen, where he tested that what would be the how would atmospheric CO2 behave if we phase off coal completely. So if we take coal but we use all the other fossils like oil and gas, and his projections showed quite clearly that actually the atmosphere and the globe would sustain the use of other fossil energy sources to far end, actually, as long as their reservoirs will give the possibility to use them if we would not use coal at all. So coal is really the bad thing at the moment. It's increasing rapidly. But of course, he does not suggest that we use the other fossil. This is just a test to see the impact of coal. And a couple of years ago, people tended to think that this problem of emission increase can be solved if we develop a sort of tactic based on already available alternative energy sources and other solutions that already exist. And this is a famous paper by Bakala together with Sokolov. They developed a so-called wedge theory where they identified a wedge that each of them could sort of reduce their emissions by 1 gigaton. And they actually had 7 wedges. Here are 6 of them numbered, and they include, of course, renewable energy sources, fuel switch from coal to gas that would reduce emissions quite markedly, CO2 capture and storage technologies, nuclear energy. So on the basis of all those technologies, we could sort of stabilize the emissions. But soon after that, became clearly evident that those 7 wedges are not far enough at all. And Hoffert and their colleagues suggested that actually the emissions are increasing so rapidly that we need 18 wedges. And all these wedges we don't have yet. So we really need a massive invest on innovations and technology in order to reduce those heavily increasing emissions. Well, Jouni already told us that there are certain sort of frames or background realities that cause increasing emissions, and they are identified by Japanese professor Kaya, who developed this so-called Kaya identity, Kaya code, where he indicated that actually emissions are dependent on population growth, per capita GDP, and energy intensity and carbon intensity. And that's it. We have to reduce some of those, or presumably all of them, in order to reduce emissions. There are no other means to do it. When it comes to population growth, I think we still lack a good strategy how to do it. It's more like an enigmatic thing to assume that the world population would start to reduce or decrease quite soon. It will happen according to some investigations after certain decades, but not quite quickly. Also, GDP. It's although we have those degrowth ideas and all similar type of ideas, they are usually only presented in well-developed countries, and they are very hard to imagine to transfer those ideas in the developing countries that really want to develop their well-being of their people. So actually we have these two, energy intensity and carbon intensity, that we have to target our focus if we want to reduce CO2 emissions. And the energy intensity means that how much energy is used per GDP unit, and carbon intensity is then a measure of how much carbon dioxide is produced per energy unit that is produced. So these are really the main factors. And unfortunately, we are in a situation where all these IPCC models or scenarios for emissions, they assume that great overwhelming part of the emissions will actually reduce automatically because this carbon intensity figures are going to be reduced. And this is an estimation how much sort of wishful thinking we have in all these scenarios, that the improved technology will always improve the efficiency of energy use and also reduce the emissions. But this is not reality. It's sort of involved in the scenarios as a sort of automatic self-producing process. But this study revealed that this is not the case. They simply would need also measures to hold, because all the statistics show actually that although we have a gradual and slow improvement in our means to produce energy and produce welfare with less emissions and less energy. This is very slow actually, and in developing countries like in China, it has turned out that during the last years it has changed to actually a wrong direction completely. And if we think about then emissions and take the population growth, okay, it follows nicely or badly. Emissions, wealth, this is GDP. It also is clearly associated, so the emissions are due to those factors. But then when we take this carbon intensity figure, we show that it has been gradually decreasing, but then here something changes. And most of the really now heavy increase in emissions are exactly due to recarbonization of our economies. So this is decarbonization, but this is recarbonization. And it seems that it takes place even in countries like US. US turned to recarbonize its economy in the year 2010, and the last year was exactly similar. So it did not follow the trend of decarbonization. Here is, by the way, the EU rate of decarbonization. It's of course positive trend, but it's far too slow to impact the emissions heavily. And here we can see the signing of the Kyoto Protocol, and actually did not change anything in the rate of decarbonization of the economy. So Kyoto has not been effective in decarbonizing our economies. France has the has the sort of world record in some years in decarbonizing its economies, and so what means that with less energy they can produce welfare, and also with less carbon emissions they can produce energy. But this was heavily due to France heavy invest on nuclear energy, so that's quite unique. Well, now if we think about then emissions, they are, as I showed, they are heavily increasing, and also the economical factors that determine the increase are not showing to the good direction, but they are also showing to the bad direction. Our global economy is quickly recarbonizing, although it should decarbonize. So why then this emission reduction has not been successful? What are the reasons? There are several options why we can think that it has not been successful. And one is that maybe it's a problem of communication. Maybe the scientific community has not succeeded in communicating the problem so that people have not started to respond. And of course, communication of science is very, very challenging task. So how to do it? There are so many sources of error on the way. How our scientific knowledge and evidence is transferred in the societal decision making and to the bigger audience than population. Like yesterday evening, I was in sauna. Ilta-Sanomat called me about this. I don't know whether they called you, Joni, about this reduction of Arctic sea ice, and whether it will bring more colder winters actually to Finland. So it can happen not only when you are in a perfect mood on your computer, but science communication is very challenging, difficult task. And some people have clearly shown a sort of signs of frustration. That if we take this opinion, if we think about that it's a communication problem, then it's so difficult sometimes to communicate that there are really on the air signs of frustrations among climate scientists. And well, if we think about climate change in a news media, we can see that it follows certain patterns. And now it's very low at the moment. It's got its highlight how much global change or climate change was in the headlines of world media. This shows the different continents, and it follows the same pattern everywhere. So it was very, very big issue before the Copenhagen meeting 2010, but then it collapsed almost completely. Maybe now the next IPCC report will again give headlines more to climate change, but it has been the economy and other issues have really dominated the news media, and the climate change very little. So this might be one part of the frustration. One is also that we don't know how to tell it and what is the best means to communicate climate change. Should we attack skeptics, or should we have more exciting presentations in order to get people sort of involved in the mitigation actions? And some people tend to think, also climate scientists, that it's a sort of linear process. If there is scientific evidence, we communicate it, then it creates action. And this is what people call the sort of linear model of communication. In this model, the scientists, we are actually messengers or disseminators or even advocates. We can become an advocate of some wished action. But many studies have shown that this is actually not working. So, in a political decision making, there are many more sort of things that have to be taken into account beside of science. So, but we scientists seem to think that if science says something, then everybody must act like science says. But it's not so. We have economic, cultural, many societal, social things that are evenly weighted when the political decisions are made. And so this is maybe I would say this is a little bit wrong attitude from scientists, that if we say something, then society should immediately act like we say, although we have plenty of uncertainties in our knowledge. And then other illustrations. Under this frustration sort of atmosphere, some people tend to think that if we increase the fear factor, then people will start to act. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. It might work to some people, but usually it's counter-impacting. But there are really good attempts, like one of the greatest thinker of our time, Leonardo, has said in a news media that 54,000 species a year are becoming extinct due to global warming, and Homo sapiens sapiens might be the next. And this is, of course, quite grim scenario. You might wonder who is this Leonardo DiCaprio. CNN founder, the tuner, gave an interview where he stated that global warming will be catastrophic and those who don't die will be cannibals. Quite amazing. But sometimes it happens also in a scientific circles. I think, especially before Copenhagen, I think the moped was mikä se on, karata käsistä, was fleet from the hands of many scientists also, and they started to give a sort of very grim statement that like this by Hans Schellenhuber, who I know well because we are in the same European Environment Panel together with him, respectable scientist, but this is just an example that of course this is not based on anything in science and cannot be based. Nobody can say anything like this. But this was repeatedly reported in news media, very in a wider scale. And we think that maybe if we really increase the fear factor to the maximum, then people start to act. But there are, as I said, there are quite a number of studies that actually show that this fear factor increase can be counter-effective. It's not maybe producing the action that we wish, and it's simply due to the fact that fear is not a good motivation for action. Fear usually makes you more individual, more conservative, and more hopeless of doing anything. And so this is not only my thinking, but there are now a number of studies that show that this tactic may not be the best one. Of course, if there happens something really bad things like now the melting of Arctic sea ice, so of course you have to report and tell that this is worse than expected. But I think we should heavily rely on facts and not to increase the level to the level that people start to be panicking and not acting in a way that really would make changes in emissions. And so there are other voices now in science also who heavily speak against of this like speaking in one voice of science, which is usually considered as a good thing. If scientists speak in one voice, then the politicians will listen. But like what Dan Sarevich said in a Nature commentary, he actually says that it's much more effective to give a sort of disagreed statement. Sometimes it's to really to give all the uncertainties and be open and transparent in our communication. Then, because we need we need climate science and trustworthy climate science for decades ahead, and so we shouldn't make overstatement that would spoil the reputation of truthful science. So this is his opinion. Also, Judy Corey has she has a really nice web page where she invites everybody to discuss, skeptics, all people, and she really thinks that this linear way of communication is not the best way. She speaks about circular model of communication where we really are communicating with people, and we act as honest brokers, not as advocates of any message. So, and she invites people to engage, to discussion, and to have a sort of ultimately then joint knowledge bases where true action can gradually emerge. Because this whole discussion is so polarized. We have demons and angels, the other side, and they never meet. And she wants them to meet and go to together to some sort of agreements of basics. Also, what I recommend is that Mike Hume's book, Why We Disagree About Climate Change. This is a very, very good book. Mike Hume was a former head of the climate research unit in Eastern Anglia University, and he approaches the whole climate change debate from the angle of different disciplines and also different sort of world views, and it's really nice book. I recommend heavily to read about it. Okay, we have mega problems and we need a sort of mega solution. And now to the end part of my talk, I will just go through some possible solution strategies that might help in solving the climate change problem. First of all, we have to understand that this is sort of wicked problem. Climate change is wicked problem. Okay, let's go here. This wicked problem concept was developed by two researchers actually in urban planning research. They found out that urban planning, especially large cities, it's such a huge problematic area that it has certain characters that do not apply to any common problem. And in order to separate between wicked and so-called tame problem, we can maybe mention that that acidification was probably a tame problem. It was only caused by one or two emittents, pollutants that were generated by certain type of industry or energy production. But they were then easy to remove without touching the productivity or energy supply per se, but only to take those pollutants away. But wicked problems are much more complex. Everything here is dependent on carbon. Actually, this table is carbon, our living is carbon, so the whole society, economy, we are totally dependent on carbon. That's why climate change problem, the emission problem is really a bigger problem. There are some rules for wicked problem. Usually, for instance, like every wicked problem can be considered to be a symptom of another problem. There is, of course, problem of overpopulation, which is on the basis of the whole emission problem. So this kind of, or we don't know even when this problem has been solved. We don't know exact point, although we would stop all emissions now. There are still quite a large amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for several hundreds of years. And what is then this meaning to other systems? How much other greenhouse gases from other natural sources are going to be released? So we do not have a real stopping rule that we know that now this problem has been solved. And we have this internal climate variability that Jouni mentioned. It's always there. So it's a very difficult problem to really to know when we have solved it. So these kind of problems are called wicked problems, or social mess. Some people call them social mess. Levin et al. Put a paper together where they nominated climate change as a super wicked problem. And this is caused by the fact that time is running out. Those seeking to solve the problem are also causing it. And there is no central authority who should solve the problem. So it makes it a super wicked problem. So this is another illustration of wicked problem, social mess. But it repeats the same ideas. Usually the wicked problems are very difficult because they are also, people's opinions are very, very divided regarding the problem. And there is usually big polarization and usually great resistant change. Okay, John Kay, he's an economist. He wrote a nice book called, I don't know even how to pronounce it, but Obliquity, where he states that those wicked problems are quite often maybe more efficiently solved using indirect means than direct means. To mitigate global warming, we are now desperately trying to use direct means. So we try to regulate CO2 emissions using agreements like Kyoto. But it seems that it has not had simply no impact on true emissions in the atmosphere. They are increasing all the time. So it's sort of direct goal. But we are using indirect methods often, like carbon trading. It's an indirect method used for direct goals. And this John Kay says that many wicked problems are perhaps more efficiently solved by using direct methods but approaching the problem indirectly. And what could it mean? What could it mean? I was involved in a process where we wrote a hardcore paper a couple of years ago, and there are plenty of scientists involved in this paper where we tried to develop sort of alternative ways. And one of the main messages was this, that we could probably approach the whole problem indirectly. So we should improve people's immediate living conditions and at the same time reduce emissions. And make also societies more sustainable for any kind of changes in natural environmental conditions. I have no time to go through this all, but you might, if you just Google hardcore paper, you might read the whole something like 40 pages. It has created a lot of discussion, and we are very happy that now it seems that actually quite a number of researchers are taking our ideas and following them. It's basically based on the idea that there are we can have two kinds of global change policies, and the one is simply focusing on greenhouse gases, carbon policy, that is of course crucial and essential to solve the problem. But we should maybe have a sort of wider perspective on climate policy, where we should take into account also air quality issues, improve the air quality of peoples, where we should pay attention more to black carbon and soot that are causing rapidly warming land use changes that is probably going to be in the next IPCC report more emphasized its importance. And also adaptation, carbon sinks, all these should be a part of sort of the solution. And it was just a couple of months ago, there was an excellent paper in Science where actually they do not explicitly say that it's our idea, and I don't mind whose idea it is, but this is what we aimed with this hardcore paper. So these people are suggesting that focusing on black carbon and methane emissions, ozone problems, had a direct economical benefit for people, and at the same time they very quickly reduce the expected warming. It has been assumed or proposed that we could take away from future warming about 1/3 by reducing only soot pollution. That is really causing heavy warming, especially in the Arctic areas. And it's also one cause of the big ice melt. Also sea ice melt and glacier melt, and even lake ice melting is caused by, at least partly by, soot pollution. And there is heavy increase at the moment in developing countries, especially in Asia, in China, India, in production of black carbon to the atmosphere, and it's very short-lived. So if we would succeed to reduce or get rid of soot pollution, it would have immediate effect on climate. Quite opposite to carbon dioxide, which is very, very long-lived, and methane, they are long-lived gases. These particles, black carbon particles, are very short-lived, so only 1 week or so they are in the atmosphere, but they cause very heavy warming. According to some studies, even half of the Arctic warming since 1950 is caused by soot, black carbon. But of course, this is under study, so it might change the figures. But nevertheless, its radiative forcing has already now been estimated as being the second largest after CO2 from anthropogenic sources. So it's like close to 1 watt per square meter. And in the previous IPCC 2007 report, it was still something like 0.1 to 0.3. So it has tripled over almost its forcing estimated forcing factor. The other thing is that we should focus on human sectors that are causing most rapidly and most efficient warming, because human sectors, human activities, they cause both cooling substances and warming substances. And this is a nice study by Unger et al., published in PNAS, where they separated per each human sector those emissions of pollutions or whatever land use change that cause cooling, and they are on this left-hand side of this. So they measured it as a radiative forcing per square meter, and these are causing warming. And these are two time frames. So this is till the year 2020, and this is to the end of this century. And we can change that it rapidly changes a long time. But if we want quick action, we want quickly to reduce warming and emissions, we should focus on the human sectors that cause most warming. And at the moment, most warming is caused by on-road transportation. So cars are the biggest problem in the sense of that most of the pollution and the emissions that comes from cars, they are warming. This is quite amazing that still, if we take global industry as a whole, it's still till year 2020, it's actually causing more cooling than warming. And quite often we used to think very differently, that we focus on wrong things in order to get quick solutions. So the other is then biofuel. So exactly this burning in households that cause huge amount of soot and other emissions that are on the warming side. Animal husbandry is the third one. Household fossil fuels, wasteland, and here is power sector, so the energy production. It's quite balanced at the moment when it comes to cooling and warming emissions, but more warming than cooling until year 2020. But things tend to change, of course, quite rapidly, a long time. So here, by the end of the century, it's of course based on facts that it's very difficult to sort of estimate or think about what is the technology used in all these sectors by the end of this century. But nevertheless, these are rough estimations. So by the end of this century, the power sector is producing most warming. On-road is still very, very heavily warming producing human sector. So, yes, this is actually here. I just put maybe this as a sort of just to stimulate your thinking that we have alternative means to approach the problem, not only just global agreement on CO2, but putting emphasis on other aspects and maybe approaching the whole problem more indirectly, and in that way help to mitigate global warming. These are just some way of thinking that do not need to be sort of in contradiction. We can be flexible, but maybe the reformists are now emerging who try to think this problem a little bit differently. It's not anymore sort of pollution control problem like acid rain or ozone depletion, but it's a bigger problem that needs a more sort of sophisticated and more wider scale or wider repertoire of solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Atte. Very interesting speech. I guess there might be some questions. Please.
Yes. You mentioned the idea of degrowth in the economy. Has the whole idea been totally abandoned, or is there still any discussion?
Well, I think it's very much. I think an idea that has much potential and much discussed idea, but whether it's realistic, it's completely another matter of discussion. I don't think it's not realistic at all in the current world when it comes to massive growth in developing countries that really want the same living standard as we do.
What if it included changes in the property of money itself, like demurrage rates and negative interest rates?
Too difficult for me to estimate. I'm not an economist at all in that sense, but hard to imagine that. And as we see the OECD countries, their emission rates relative to global, they are reducing it all the time. So it's something like now what is real under Kyoto Protocol, it's 15% of all emissions who has signed the agreement. It's developing countries. It's simply, of course, we have to do our deal and do our best, but it's not going to be solved here at all. So it's really a matter of China, India, Brazil, Indonesia, like these rapidly growing countries. And we have to develop here. What we can do best is to develop here cheap, non-polluting energy sources that can be transferred there, that are, of course, environmentally and sustainable in all respects.
Yes, you have the slide. That one is, first, thanks for the great presentation. You have the slide about the decoupling of emissions in the Western countries. And, well, how much do you...
I have quite a bit of the same T-shirt.
I got it from Urban Outfitters.
I was there.
How much of the decoupling of the Western countries is due to kind of like outsourcing the emissions to developing countries? So that's what, That's actually my question.
Of course, global trade is so complicated, and even how to calculate the emissions, it's very difficult task. So, do we take what we export and like China is probably exporting so much stuff that they are actually not producing the emissions in their own country. If they do it only for their own people, it's far less. So the Western countries, of course, buy the products largely, and at the moment this will be changed, of course. But yeah, I think the global economy is so decoupled. It's very difficult to separate what is really per se each country's emissions. Like UK, they calculated first the emissions by neglecting completely their ferry transportation, marine sector, because they thought that it's not happening in the island, so it's elsewhere. And so, what do you think about that? And of course, Finland is producing paper and not the Finns, but millions of other people. So, is it their fault or our fault? Really?
Yeah, I'm just like about the reduction and the thing that Kyoto wouldn't work. Yeah. So how much of the reduction that we kind of like have had is due to so you don't have any figures of like how many.
There are a number of studies that really the Kyoto has not been.
Yeah, but like how much of that is the like the outsourcing? I don't know. You know. It's complicated.
Yeah, really complicated.
There was a questions and then for you to first.
Yeah, at the beginning of your lecture you were talking about recarbonization. I may have missed it, but what are the things that have caused decarbonization in the recent years?
But it's simply that the economic growth and people's demand are increasing so heavily that the technology does not follow. So, like in China, they are producing energy and also products using old technologies. And the demand is growing, but the technology is almost stuck in development in many areas. And so that causes immediately, when the demand increases and technology doesn't move along, it causes a recarbonization. But I don't actually know what in the States, what is causing it. It might be the increase also in coal. For some reason, the US has increased in coal, use of coal in energy production quite heavily.
Yes, I was just wondering whether the kind of different groups or the different pools in this debate are actually somehow mutually exclusive, and whether the problem is actually so huge and urgent that we should kind of drive on all the lanes that exist.
Yeah, that's of course sort of civilized dictatorship would be the best, of course, mode of governing people. But I don't know who is then responsible for that. So who takes the action? It's simply. It's difficult to see that people do it if they don't get also immediate benefit, and that's simply human nature. That's why we try to approach it indirectly, the improving people's living condition, get cheap energy, which is non-polluting, improving the air quality, and improving the harvest by reducing ozone, increase harvest remarkably, and things like that immediate benefit for people, and in that way also emissions are going to be reduced.
But would you still see some value in some sort of like top-down agreed long-term targets so that we could set a schedule?
Yeah,
and
well,
see whether what we do is
if
enough
it would
to-
work, but we have now so many exercises that who is speaking at the moment? We have December. We have the next COP meeting. There is no discussion at all about that because people have already given up. It's not going to be global agreement. Instead of increasing the key of the countries, they have resigned. Like Canada has resigned, Japan has resigned, Russia will resign absolutely, and so it's simply so difficult. If it would work perfect, so I have nothing against it, but it's simply you have to think about means that work in reality, not just in our illustrations. So, if anything that works, I'm happy to go do whatever.
Okay, I think two things we have to not get asked.
Well, mine's just a general, but will the slides be available somewhere on the internet?
Yes,
Well,
if you
yes.
can give that, yes, it will be available on our website.
But you have some password, or is it free?
It is in internet, so if you
Completely
have some,
free for everybody.
so we can
Then
discuss
I'm not
afterwards.
sure. I have to think about it.
Okay, yeah. But we can do so that next time maybe on email, those who are interested we can send them
Yeah.
for those. Because I noticed almost everyone you are student at the university, so
Maybe you should circulate the paper around.
And you had a question.
Yeah, about the science communication, if we have time. You showed the slide where, was it Sarewitz or someone who discussed about this, that how the process should be. If the scientists are the communicators or someone in between, and if the scientists should come as one kind of, consensus or giving out mixed. And you kind of showed questions, but I'm interested more in the answer side in a way, because if you think, for example, the cholesterol discussion at the moment in Finland, many really high-level, educated people are really confused at the moment that which butter or margarine should I choose or skip it all. So how do you think regarding climate, if we have the same, that we have really many voices, and we know that we have the uncertainties there, but how do you think that the third-party person who's kind of not actively interested in the issue just picks up some headlines, how would they,
Well, this is
actuate?
I think we should start to train our school children already to live under uncertainties and under different risks, and not to think about that our world is so that one day we all share the same opinion. We never will share the same opinion, and I think we have evidence enough to act. And this fight against skeptics or simply to take one fact and try to heavily to defend it, it's doomed to be failed. I think it's wrong use of energy. Use of energy, what we know. We know certain facts already that people are affecting climate, and we should improve, like we have the UN Millennium Report, which hardly mentions climate change, but have all the other actions that will improve the environment. Let's follow those. They are perfect without even climate change. If we think about sustainable way of living, that will automatically reduce also the warming index. So I don't know why we have to have a goal that everybody have to agree, because then still we have political opinions, cultural, social, economic, whatever. It's never going to be a full agreement.
But in a way, the question was how to, whatever the science is, if it's climate, it's gastronomic or whatever, to think, because I'm afraid that the other route will lead to the same point, that because of our, I don't know, cultural beliefs and everything, we just pick the one we get from the media, and it won't change.
We can think about what is likely and most probable, but still be very open about uncertainties, difficulties. Why does not everything happen exactly as was predicted, or whatever? Be open. I think it will pay off ultimately, then finally, for the benefit of everybody. If scientists are really open in their problems, in their discussions, and nevertheless we know already so much that we have enough grounds to act. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your attention. I think this is very good start for our next time.